Basic psychology. Holism and reductionism. What is reductionism? Do you know what reductionism is in psychology?
No, I'm not familiar with that term. Can you explain it to me?
Reductionism is the idea of breaking down complex phenomena into simpler, more fundamental components.
I see. Can you give me some examples of how reductionism is applied in psychology?
Certainly. There are two main types of reductionism in psychology: biological and environmental.
Okay, can you tell me more about biological reductionism?
Biological reductionism looks to explain behavior using biological systems, such as genetics, physiology, biochemistry, and even evolution.
That's fascinating. Can you give me an example of how biological reductionism is used?
For instance, schizophrenia has been linked to excessive amounts of the neurotransmitter dopamine, and drugs that block dopamine can reduce the symptoms.
I see, and what about environmental reductionism?
Environmental reductionism is linked to the behaviorist approach, which explains behavior in terms of simple stimulus-response relationships.
Can you provide an example of environmental reductionism?
Sure, the behaviorist explanation for attachment is that the mother is seen as a rewarding individual because she provides food, which reduces discomfort. What is holism? Holism is the opposite of reductionism, which focuses on individual parts. Holism, on the other hand, looks at systems as a whole.
I see. So, how does that apply to understanding human behavior?
Well, the holistic approach suggests that we can't predict behavior based solely on the knowledge of individual components, like genetics or biochemistry.
That makes sense. Human behavior is quite complex, isn't it?
Exactly. Holism argues that we need to consider the social context, friends, and family as well, as they can greatly influence an individual's behavior.
Interesting. So, the holistic view offers a higher level explanation of behavior, but it's less scientific than the reductionist approach?
That's right. Holism is less predictive, but it doesn't ignore the complexity of human behavior, which is an advantage. Evaluating holism and reductionism. Reductionism is the idea that complex phenomena can be explained by breaking them down into their simpler components. For example, in the case of mental health issues like schizophrenia or depression, a reductionist approach would focus on the biological factors, such as brain chemistry and genetics.
I see. And how does that help in the development of treatments?
Well, a reductionist approach has led to the development of biological therapies, such as drug treatments, that aim to tackle the underlying biological causes of these disorders. Studies have shown that drug therapy can help alleviate symptoms and improve the lives of those suffering from mental health issues.
That's really interesting. But doesn't that mean that other factors, like cognitive and environmental influences, are being overlooked?
Exactly. Most psychologists acknowledge that human behavior and mental health are far more complex than a purely biological explanation can account for. A holistic approach, which considers the interaction of various factors, including cognitive, social, and cultural influences, can provide a more comprehensive understanding.
Can you give me an example of how a holistic approach might be more effective?
Sure. Research on conformity, such as the Stanford Prison Experiment, has shown that social behaviors can only be fully understood by analyzing the interaction between individuals and the group context. A reductionist approach focused solely on the individual participants would have missed the important insights gained from the holistic analysis of the entire group dynamic.
Wow, that's really fascinating. It seems like both holistic and reductionist approaches have their place in psychology, depending on the research question and the level of analysis.
Exactly. The key is to recognize the strengths and limitations of each approach and to use them in a complementary way to gain a more comprehensive understanding of human behavior and mental health.